Most people are tired, not because life is hard, but because they keep fighting reality. They wake up already bracing, already disappointed, already waiting for the day to prove them right. That happiness is fragile, conditional, reserved for easier lives. And yet, some people stay calm even when everything goes wrong. Some people stay warm when life turns cold. Some people carry a quiet happiness that doesn't disappear when the pressure shows up. This audiobook is about that. Welcome to the secret of daily happiness. Not the fake kind, not the smile for the camera kind, but the kind that survives hard days, uncertainty, loss, pressure, and slow progress. In this audiobook, you will discover how to stay happy no matter what life throws at you, not by escaping difficulty, but by changing how you stand inside it. You will learn how to find peace when life is difficult, how to build a form of happiness that does not depend on perfect circumstances, how to be happy every day, even when life is hard. Here is the punchline that will guide everything you hear next. Happiness is not a reward for a good life. It is a skill for surviving a real one. And that changes everything. If this resonates even slightly, make a quiet agreement with yourself right now. Stay with this audiobook, because the version of you who finishes it will not experience life the same way again. Let's be honest. Life is heavy. Bills arrive. People disappoint. Plans fall apart. Your energy fades faster than your responsibilities. And most people respond the same way. They tell themselves, "I'll be happy when things calm down. When I fix this. When I get there. When life finally cooperates." But life doesn't cooperate. It challenges. And waiting for happiness is how people spend years emotionally unavailable to their own lives. Here is the truth no one teaches early enough. If happiness depends on life being easy, you will spend most of your life unhappy. This audiobook exists to break that pattern. We are not chasing constant joy. We are building emotional steadiness. We are building peace that works on bad days. We are building a happiness that does not panic when things go wrong. Let me show you the roadmap of where we're going. First, we will dismantle the myth that happiness means feeling good all the time. Then, you'll learn how to stay emotionally grounded when life feels unfair or overwhelming. We will talk about inner stability, the kind that doesn't collapse when moods change. You'll learn how to care for yourself during emotional lows without self-judgment. And finally, you'll learn how to live with quiet contentment, even while life remains imperfect. This is not therapy. This is not denial. This is emotional discipline. And before we go deeper, one important note. This audiobook is educational and motivational, not a replacement for professional mental health support. What it offers is perspective, structure, and tools for everyday resilience. Now let's begin where happiness actually starts. Not with positivity, not with gratitude lists, but with honesty. Most people wake up already arguing with reality. The alarm rings, the body feels heavy, the mind starts listing problems, and instead of noticing what is, they immediately resist it. I shouldn't feel like this. I need to be more motivated. I can't afford to be tired. That resistance is subtle, but it shapes the entire day. Because when you fight how you feel, you double the suffering. Here's a quiet but powerful truth. Happiness begins the moment you stop punishing yourself for being human. Acceptance is not giving up. It's stopping the internal war. When you acknowledge how the day actually feels, without judgment, tension releases. The breath deepens. The mind slows. You're no longer wasting energy pretending, and energy saved is energy available for living. This is why people who accept difficult days often move through them better than people who fake positivity. They are not weaker. They are wiser. Happiness does not require enthusiasm. It requires alignment. Alignment between what you feel and how you treat yourself. Now let me ask you something. How often do you make yourself wrong for not feeling okay? For being tired, for being overwhelmed, for not enjoying something you're supposed to enjoy. That self-judgment quietly erodes happiness, not the circumstances, the judgment. The happiest people are not the ones with fewer problems. They are the ones who stopped adding a second layer of suffering on top of the first. This audiobook will teach you how to remove that second layer. If this idea already feels relieving, pause for a moment. Notice your breath. Notice your body. That small sense of ease, that's the doorway. If this opening resonates, tap like. Not for the algorithm, but as a signal to yourself that you're choosing a different relationship with life. And if a line lands later, write it down or share it in the comments. Reflection anchors change. Now here's what most people misunderstand. Happiness is not something you feel first and then act from. It's something you act into. You don't wait for happiness to arrive. You build conditions where it can exist. And the first condition is safety, internal safety. A nervous system that is not constantly braced. A mind that is not constantly judging itself. That's where daily happiness is born. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about grounding. How to stay emotionally steady when life feels overwhelming. Because happiness does not come from escaping chaos. It comes from learning how to stand calmly inside it. And once you learn that, life stops feeling like something you're barely surviving. Chapter 2. Life doesn't get easier because you become happier. You become happier because you learn how to carry life differently. This is the chapter most people never learn. They think happiness is something that shows up when problems leave. But problems don't leave. They change shape. They change faces. They change seasons. So the real question is not, how do I avoid hard days? The real question is, how do I stay emotionally steady when hard days arrive? That's what grounding is. Grounding is the ability to remain present inside discomfort without collapsing into it. It's not pretending everything is fine. It's not forcing gratitude. It's staying connected to yourself when things feel heavy. Here's why grounding matters. When life becomes difficult, most people leave themselves. They dissociate. They distract. They numb. They spiral into thinking. They abandon the present moment because the present moment doesn't feel good. But happiness is not found in escaping the moment. It's found in inhabiting it gently. Let me say that again. Happiness grows when you stop running from your current experience. The happiest people are not immune to pain. They're skilled at staying with it without turning it into a story about failure. Pain is chapter of life. Suffering is optional and usually self-generated. Here's how suffering is created. Something difficult happens. Then the mind says, this shouldn't be happening. This means something is wrong with me. This will never get better. Now pain has a narrative, and narrative multiplies pain. Grounding breaks that loop. Grounding brings you back to what is actually happening, not what your mind is predicting. Your feet on the floor, your breath in your chest, the sound in the room, the moment you are in. This is not spirituality, it's nervous system regulation. A grounded body calms the mind. A calm mind allows perspective. Perspective creates peace. This is why people who stay happy under pressure are not emotionally numb. They are embodied. They stay in their bodies instead of fleeing into fear. Now let's talk about one of the biggest enemies of daily happiness. Comparison. Comparison quietly poisons joy faster than almost anything else. You scroll. You observe. You measure your life against someone else's highlight reel. And suddenly, what was enough feels insufficient. But here's the truth. Comparison is not about wanting what someone else has. It's about doubting the value of your own path. Happiness disappears when you measure your life with someone else's ruler, because that ruler was never made for you. The happiest people understand something deeply. Your life does not need to look impressive to be meaningful. Peace doesn't come from being ahead. It comes from being aligned. Aligned with your values, aligned with your energy, aligned with your current season. Some seasons are expansive, some are quiet, some are heavy. All are valid. Resisting your current season creates friction. Accepting it creates flow. This doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you stop punishing yourself for where you are. Now let's talk about emotional honesty. Most people believe happiness requires positivity. It doesn't. It requires truth. You cannot be happy if you are constantly lying to yourself about how you feel. Forcing yourself to stay positive when you are exhausted creates emotional debt. That debt always gets collected later, as burnout, resentment, or numbness. True happiness allows space for all emotions. Sadness without self-judgment, frustration without shame, fatigue without criticism. When emotions are allowed, they pass. When they are resisted, they linger. This is why people who let themselves feel fully often recover faster than those who suppress. Feeling is not weakness. Avoidance is. Now listen carefully. Being happy does not mean enjoying every moment. It means not abandoning yourself during difficult ones. That's the distinction that changes everything. Let me ask you something important. When life gets hard, do you become harsh with yourself? Do you tell yourself to be better, do more, push harder? That inner pressure kills happiness. The happiest people don't motivate themselves with punishment. They motivate themselves with compassion and discipline. Compassion to acknowledge pain. Discipline to keep moving gently forward. This balance is what sustains happiness long term. Now let's address another misunderstanding. Happiness is not a feeling you chase. It's a state you protect. You protect it by setting emotional boundaries, by resting when needed, by saying no without guilt, by choosing your inputs carefully, what you watch, what you read, who you listen to. Your environment shapes your emotional baseline. If your environment constantly activates fear, comparison, or urgency, happiness will struggle to breathe. You don't need a perfect environment. You need a supportive one. Even small adjustments matter. Less noise, more stillness, less rushing, more intention. This is how daily happiness is built, not in big breakthroughs, but in quiet consistency. If this chapter of the audiobook is resonating, pause for a moment. Notice how your shoulders feel. Notice your breath. That settling you feel? That's grounding. And grounding is the foundation of happiness that lasts. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that surprises most people. Why happiness is not found by adding more, but by subtracting what drains you. Because sometimes the secret to happiness is not what you need to gain, but what you finally let go of. Chapter 3. Most people believe happiness comes from adding something. More money, more success, more recognition, more freedom, more time. But what they rarely consider is how much happiness is being drained every single day. Not by what's missing, but by what's unnecessary. Unnecessary expectations, unnecessary pressure, unnecessary comparison, unnecessary emotional weight. The secret of daily happiness is not accumulation, it's subtraction. Let me explain. Every day you wake up carrying invisible burdens you never consciously chose. Expectations about how productive you should be. Expectations about how far along you should be. Expectations about how you should feel by now. These expectations quietly turn ordinary days into emotional battlegrounds. You're not unhappy because life is objectively terrible. You're unhappy because life is not matching a script in your head. And that script was written by culture, comparison, and past versions of you, not by wisdom. Here's a sentence that changes how you experience life. Most suffering comes from arguing with reality instead of adapting to it. When you stop arguing with what is, happiness has space to breathe. This does not mean you give up on growth. It means you stop demanding that growth feel good all the time. Happiness is not the absence of effort. It's the absence of unnecessary resistance. Now let's talk about emotional clutter. Just like physical clutter crowds a room, emotional clutter crowds your inner world. Unresolved resentment, lingering guilt, unspoken disappointment, mental replays of conversations that already ended. These things take up space, and happiness cannot live in a crowded mind. The happiest people are not those with perfect lives. They are the ones who regularly clear emotional weight. They let go faster. They forgive sooner, not to excuse, but to free themselves. They don't carry yesterday into today unless it teaches something useful. Ask yourself this honestly. What are you still holding on to that no longer serves you? a version of yourself that didn't work out, a relationship that ended but still occupies space, a mistake you replay even though the lesson is already learned. Happiness increases when you release what no longer belongs in the present. Now here's something subtle but important. Letting go does not always mean closure. Sometimes it means acceptance without explanation. You don't need answers to be at peace. You don't need apologies to move forward. You don't need validation to heal. You need permission to stop revisiting the same emotional rooms. Peace comes when you decide, I'm done paying rent here. Now let's talk about expectations, especially self-expectations. Many people are unhappy because they are at war with their own pace. They think they should be faster, stronger, more accomplished, more motivated. And every time they fall short of that imaginary version, they feel like they failed. But here's the truth. Progress that respects your energy lasts longer than progress driven by self-criticism. Happiness doesn't grow in environments of constant pressure. It grows where effort and kindness coexist. This is why some people burn out chasing happiness. They're using punishment as fuel. Punishment creates movement, but it destroys joy. Discipline does not require cruelty. You can move forward without hating where you are. Now let's talk about one of the biggest emotional drains of all. Trying to control what you cannot. Other people's moods, other people's decisions, other people's opinions. So much unhappiness comes from investing emotional energy where you have no authority. You can influence, you can communicate, you can set boundaries, but you cannot control outcomes, and the moment you stop trying to control them, you feel lighter. Happiness increases when you focus your energy where it actually matters. Your actions, your habits, your responses, your values. This is why daily happiness is an inside job. Not because the world doesn't matter, but because your relationship with it matters more. Now here's a powerful practice. At the end of the day, ask yourself one question. What drained me today that didn't deserve that energy? Not to blame, not to criticize, just to notice. Awareness is subtraction. When you see the drain, you naturally reduce it over time. This is how happiness quietly increases without forcing anything. If this chapter is landing, pause for a moment. Notice how much pressure you've been carrying without realizing it. Notice how many expectations weren't yours to begin with. That release you feel. That's happiness expanding. Not because something was added, but because something was removed. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood ideas about happiness. Why happiness is not about feeling good, but about feeling at peace with your life. And once you understand that difference, you stop chasing happiness and start living it. Chapter 4. Most people think happiness means feeling good, feeling light, feeling excited, feeling motivated. But that definition is fragile because feelings change. Energy fluctuates, motivation fades, moods rise and fall with sleep, stress, hormones, weather, and circumstance. If happiness depends on feeling good, then happiness will be rare. The people who stay happy long-term understand something deeper. Happiness is not about feeling good. It's about being at peace with your life, even when you don't feel good. Peace is quieter than joy, less dramatic, but far more stable. Peace doesn't disappear when your mood drops. Peace doesn't panic when life becomes uncertain. Peace says, this moment is allowed. And that permission changes everything. Most unhappiness comes from emotional resistance. I shouldn't feel this way. This isn't how my life was supposed to go. I can't accept this yet. Resistance turns discomfort into suffering. Peace comes when you stop demanding that life feel different before you allow yourself to be okay. And let me be very clear here. Accepting your life does not mean liking everything about it. It means acknowledging reality without fighting it internally. You can accept where you are and still work to change it. Acceptance is the foundation of movement, not the enemy of it. Now let's talk about inner peace during difficult seasons. Every life has them. Periods where progress feels slow, where effort feels heavy, where nothing seems to be clicking. Many people believe happiness is impossible during these times. But those seasons are not happiness-free zones. They are depth-building zones. The people who stay happy during hard seasons don't tell themselves, this shouldn't be happening. They tell themselves, this is chapter of my life right now. That shift removes self-betrayal. Because the pain of difficulty is one thing, the pain of rejecting your own life while you're living it is another. Peace begins when you stop emotionally abandoning yourself during struggle. Now let's talk about a powerful misconception. Some people think being at peace means being passive. It doesn't. Peace does not mean you stop striving. It means you stop panicking. You still take action. You still pursue growth. You still care deeply. But you do it without the constant inner pressure to escape the present. That pressure is what drains happiness. Now consider this. Have you ever noticed how some people are calm even when they're unhappy? They're not cheerful. They're not pretending. They're grounded. They feel sadness, but they don't collapse. They feel frustration, but they don't spiral. They feel uncertainty, but they don't lose themselves. That is peace. Peace allows emotion without chaos. And chaos is what makes people miserable, not emotion itself. Let's talk about emotional honesty again. You cannot be at peace with your life if you are constantly trying to edit it in your head. I should be further. I should be different. I shouldn't need rest. I shouldn't feel this much. Those shoulds poison peace. Peace comes when you replace should with is. This is where I am. This is how I feel. This is what I have. From that clarity, real change becomes possible. Now here's something practical. Happiness becomes sustainable when you build daily anchors. Not big moments, not life milestones, small stabilizers. A morning routine that centers you, a walk that grounds you, a quiet moment before sleep where you reconnect with yourself. These are not luxuries. They are emotional infrastructure. Without them, happiness has nothing to stand on. People who stay happy protect these anchors fiercely, not because they're selfish, but because they understand something. You cannot pour peace into your life if your inner cup is constantly empty. Rest is not laziness. Stillness is not weakness. Slowness is not failure. These are conditions for happiness. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, where am I rushing my life when it needs patience? Where am I demanding happiness instead of allowing peace? Just noticing this softens resistance, and softness is not weakness. It's openness. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that sounds simple, but changes how happy you feel every single day. Why happiness depends more on how you interpret your life than on what actually happens in it. Because once you change interpretation, the same life feels completely different. Chapter 5. Your happiness is shaped less by what happens to you, and more by the story you tell yourself about what happens. This is where most people lose peace without realizing it. They don't suffer because of events. They suffer because of interpretation. The mind is a meaning-making machine. It does not wait for facts. It fills gaps. It assigns intent. It predicts outcomes. And if you're not careful, it turns neutral moments into emotional burdens. Two people can live the same day. One feels drained. The other feels grounded. Same circumstances. Different interpretation. Here's the truth that changes how you experience life. Your emotions follow your interpretation, not reality itself. This does not mean you deny pain. It means you stop adding unnecessary meaning to it. Let's look at a simple example. Something doesn't go as planned. The mind says, "This always happens to me." That's proof I'm behind. This means I'm failing. Now one moment becomes a personal verdict. Happiness collapses. Not because of the event, but because of the story. People who stay happy during hard times don't tell softer stories. They tell cleaner ones. They say, "This is frustrating. This is inconvenient. This is difficult right now." And they stop there. No identity attack. No future doom. No character judgment. Clean interpretation creates emotional breathing room. Now let's talk about catastrophizing, one of the biggest happiness killers. Catastrophizing takes a single problem and turns it into a life sentence. A bad week becomes a bad life. A setback becomes proof you're stuck. A delay becomes failure. But life does not move in straight lines. It moves in rhythms, expansion and contraction, momentum and pause, effort and rest. The happiest people understand this. They don't panic when progress slows. They don't insult themselves when energy dips. They trust rhythm. Now here's a powerful question to ask yourself when things feel heavy. What is happening? Without exaggeration. Not what it means. Not what it could turn into. Just what is actually happening. This question pulls you out of story and back into reality. Reality is often less threatening than imagination. Imagination creates fear. Reality offers options. This is why grounded people feel calmer. They live closer to what is real. Now let's talk about gratitude, but not the way you usually hear it. Gratitude is often presented as forced positivity. Be grateful. Others have it worse. Look on the bright side. That approach doesn't create happiness. It creates guilt. Real gratitude is not comparison. It's awareness. It's noticing what is supporting you quietly. Your breath, your body, your ability to choose. The fact that you are still here. Gratitude does not erase pain. It balances perspective. The happiest people don't ignore what's wrong. They don't ignore what's right either. They hold both. And that balance stabilizes emotion. Now let's address something uncomfortable. Sometimes people are unhappy because their life doesn't match who they truly are. They're living against their values, chasing goals they don't care about, staying in environments that drain them, saying yes when they mean no. No mindset can compensate for misalignment. Happiness requires honesty. You cannot think your way out of a life that doesn't fit you. This is why daily happiness requires small, brave adjustments. Clearer boundaries, more truthful conversations, less self-betrayal. Every time you act in alignment with yourself, happiness increases slightly. Not dramatically, reliably. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself quietly, where am I interpreting life in a way that hurts me unnecessarily? Where am I telling a story that drains my peace? Just noticing this begins to loosen its grip. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about one of the most overlooked keys to happiness. Why happiness is built through discipline, not motivation, and why structure creates freedom. Because happiness is not accidental. It's designed. Chapter 6. Most people believe happiness comes from motivation, from feeling inspired, from waking up excited, from wanting to do the right things. But motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with sleep, mood, hormones, weather, and circumstance. If happiness depends on motivation, happiness will disappear the moment life becomes demanding. The people who stay happy long-term understand something different. Happiness is built through discipline, not inspiration. Not harsh discipline, not rigid control, but gentle structure. Structure that supports you on days when you don't feel like supporting yourself. Here's why this matters. On hard days, your emotions will not guide you well. They will tell you to isolate, to scroll, to avoid, to numb. Discipline steps in when emotion steps back. Discipline says, we still show up, just more gently today. This is how happiness survives difficulty. Let's redefine discipline. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is care applied consistently. Going to bed on time when you're tired. Moving your body even when your mood is low. Eating in a way that supports your energy. Keeping promises to yourself, even small ones. These things don't feel exciting, but they create emotional safety. And emotional safety is the soil where happiness grows. Now let's talk about routines. Routines often get a bad reputation. People think routines make life boring. In reality, routines reduce decision fatigue. They protect your energy. They remove the question, what should I do? And replace it with, this is what I do. Happiness increases when fewer decisions are loaded with emotion. A morning routine grounds you before the world reaches you. An evening routine calms your system before rest. Simple habits create predictability, and predictability calms the nervous system. Calm nervous systems experience more happiness. This is biological, not philosophical. Now here's something important. Your routine does not need to be perfect. It needs to be yours. One walk, one quiet moment, one act of care you do every day, no matter how you feel. That consistency tells your brain, I am safe, I am supported. Safety precedes happiness. Now let's talk about effort on hard days. This is where many people break. They expect themselves to perform at the same level every day, and when they can't, they feel like failures. But happiness does not require equal output every day. It requires consistent direction. Some days are full capacity days. Some days are maintenance days. Some days are recovery days. All are valid. The happiest people adjust effort, not self-worth. They don't say, I'm lazy today. They say, today requires less. That self-respect preserves happiness. Now let's talk about self-talk. Discipline without compassion becomes cruelty, but compassion without discipline becomes stagnation. Daily happiness lives in the balance. Instead of saying, you should be better, say, this is hard, and I'm still showing up. Instead of saying, why am I like this? Say, this is what I need right now. The tone you use with yourself shapes your emotional baseline. Happiness is influenced more by your internal tone than by external success. Now let's address another misunderstanding. Some people think happiness means avoiding responsibility. In reality, responsibility gives life meaning. But there's a difference between responsibility and overload. Happiness increases when responsibility aligns with capacity. When you carry what's yours, not what everyone else expects. This means learning to say no, not aggressively, not defensively, but clearly. No protects happiness, not because others are wrong, but because you are finite. Your energy matters. Now pause for a moment. Think about one small structure that would support you tomorrow. Not a transformation, not a big goal. One thing that would make tomorrow slightly steadier. That's how happiness is built. Small, consistent, human. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something deeply connected to happiness, but rarely discussed honestly. Why happiness depends on connection, but not on approval. And how to build relationships that support peace instead of draining it. Because who you share your life with shapes how happy it feels. Chapter 7. Happiness does not grow in isolation, but it also does not grow in dependence. This is where many people get confused. They hear that connection is important, so they cling. They seek approval. They shape themselves to fit. And slowly, happiness erodes. Because connection without self-respect becomes emotional exhaustion. The happiest people understand a quiet truth. They connect deeply, without abandoning themselves. They do not need constant validation to feel secure. They do not need agreement to feel grounded. They do not need attention to feel worthy. This is the difference between connection and attachment. Attachment says, I need you to feel okay. Connection says, I choose you because I already am okay. Happiness thrives in the second. Now let's talk about relationships honestly. Some relationships drain you, not because they're dramatic, but because they require you to shrink, perform, or constantly explain yourself. You feel tired after interactions. You feel tense before them. You feel relief when they end. That is information. The happiest people listen to that information. They don't demonize others. They don't create drama. They adjust distance. Distance is not punishment. It's regulation. You are allowed to step back from what dysregulates you. Peace requires boundaries. Now here's an important reframe. You don't need fewer relationships to be happy. You need healthier ones. Healthier relationships feel calm. They allow silence. They don't require constant emotional performance. You don't feel pressured to be on. You don't feel punished for honesty. You don't feel anxious about being yourself. These relationships nourish happiness. And sometimes happiness grows when you let go of relationships that only survive on chaos. Now let's talk about loneliness. Because it's misunderstood. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. You can be alone and content. You can be surrounded and lonely. Loneliness comes from lack of emotional safety, not lack of people. This is why some people feel happier alone than in draining company. Alone can be peaceful. Unsafe connection is not. Happiness increases when you choose solitude over misalignment. Solitude is not failure. It's recalibration. It's where you hear yourself again. Now let's talk about approval. The need for approval is one of the fastest ways to lose happiness, because approval is unstable. It depends on moods, on expectations, on people's unresolved issues. If your happiness depends on approval, your emotional state will constantly be negotiated. The happiest people don't seek approval. They seek alignment. They ask, does this reflect who I am? Not, will this be liked? That internal reference point stabilizes happiness. Now here's something subtle. When you stop seeking approval, some people will be uncomfortable. They were used to your compliance, your availability, your emotional responsiveness. This does not mean you're wrong. It means the dynamic is changing, and change always creates friction before it creates balance. Happiness requires the courage to disappoint others occasionally, so you don't disappoint yourself constantly. Now let's talk about giving. Giving brings happiness, but only when it's not self-sacrifice disguised as kindness. Giving that drains you breeds resentment. Giving that aligns with your values builds joy. The happiest people give from overflow, not obligation. They don't give to earn love. They give because it feels true, and they stop when it doesn't. This honesty protects happiness. Now pause. Ask yourself quietly, which relationships support my peace? Which ones quietly drain it? You don't need to act immediately. Awareness alone begins rebalancing. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something deeply important. Why happiness requires meaning, not pleasure. And how to find meaning even when life feels ordinary or difficult. Because pleasure fades, but meaning sustains. Chapter 8. Pleasure feels good, meaning feels right. And the difference between the two explains why so many people feel empty, even when life looks comfortable. Pleasure is immediate. Meaning is durable. Pleasure fades quickly. Meaning stays with you through hard days. The people who experience daily happiness are not chasing constant pleasure. They are living meaningful lives, even when those lives feel ordinary, demanding, or unfinished. Here is the truth most people discover too late. Happiness that depends on pleasure collapses under pressure. Happiness built on meaning endures it. Pleasure asks, how do I feel right now? Meaning asks, why does this matter? And when life gets hard, meaning keeps you standing when pleasure disappears. Now let's talk honestly. Many people are unhappy not because life is painful, but because it feels pointless. They wake up, they go through routines, they fulfill obligations, but nothing feels connected to something larger than the moment. Happiness fades when life feels like motion without direction. Meaning restores that direction. Meaning doesn't require grand purpose. It doesn't require changing the world. Meaning comes from alignment between what you do and what you value. Caring deeply, showing up honestly, contributing in small, consistent ways. These things create inner solidity. And inner solidity is the backbone of happiness. Now here's something important. Meaning does not remove pain. It gives pain context. When something difficult happens in a meaningful life, the mind says, this is hard, but it belongs. Belonging reduces despair. This is why people can endure tremendous difficulty when they feel their life matters, and why people with easy lives can feel deeply unhappy when they feel disconnected. Now let's talk about everyday meaning. Meaning is not found in constant excitement. It's found in responsibility you choose, not responsibility forced on you. Responsibility for your growth. Responsibility for how you treat others. Responsibility for how you show up, even when no one is watching. These responsibilities create dignity, and dignity feeds happiness quietly. The happiest people respect themselves, not because they're perfect, but because they live in integrity with their values. They do what they say they'll do. They don't abandon themselves when it's inconvenient. They move forward even when progress feels slow. That self-respect becomes emotional stability. Now let's address a misconception. Some people think happiness means avoiding discomfort, but meaning often requires discomfort. Growth is uncomfortable. Honesty is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. But these discomforts feel clean. They don't rot you from the inside. The unhappiness that comes from avoiding discomfort is far worse, because it turns into regret. Meaning protects happiness by giving discomfort purpose. Now let's talk about work, because it plays a huge role in daily happiness. Happiness does not require loving your job every day. It requires knowing why you're doing what you're doing. If your work connects to something you value, learning, providing, building, contributing, it supports happiness. If it feels like endless effort with no connection to values, happiness drains quickly. This doesn't mean you must quit immediately. It means you must reconnect effort to meaning. Why does this matter to me right now? What does this allow me to build or support? Meaning reframes effort. Effort without meaning feels like punishment. Effort with meaning feels like investment. Now let's talk about suffering. Some suffering is unavoidable. Loss, uncertainty, disappointment. But suffering becomes unbearable when it feels meaningless. The happiest people don't avoid suffering. They integrate it. They ask, what is this teaching me? What strength is this developing? What does this ask of me? These questions don't erase pain. They transform it. And transformation sustains happiness. Now pause. Ask yourself quietly, what matters to me, even when things are hard? What values do I refuse to abandon? Those answers point directly to meaning. And meaning is the deepest form of happiness available. In the next chapter, we're going to bring everything together. How to live happily daily, not occasionally. How to build a happiness that works on ordinary days, difficult days, and quiet days. Because the secret of daily happiness is not intensity, it's integration. And once happiness becomes integrated, it stops being fragile. Chapter 9. Daily happiness is not something you reach. It's something you practice. And the practice is simpler than most people expect, but harder than they want. Because it asks for consistency instead of intensity. Most people try to change their emotional state in big bursts, a vacation, a breakthrough, a motivational surge. But happiness built on spikes always crashes. Daily happiness is built through integration. The integration of mindset, habits, meaning, rest, connection, and self-respect, woven into ordinary life. This is where everything we've discussed comes together. Let's ground this. You don't wake up happy every day, but you wake up oriented. You know what matters. You know how to treat yourself when energy's low. You know how to respond instead of spiral. That orientation is happiness. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It simply steadies you. Here's a powerful reframe. Happiness is not a mood. It's a relationship with life. And like any relationship, it improves with attention and care. Now let's talk about emotional weather. Some days feel clear. Some days feel heavy. Some days feel flat. Daily happiness does not require changing the weather. It requires dressing appropriately. On heavy days, you move slower. On flat days, you keep things simple. On good days, you expand gently. You stop demanding that every day feel the same. That flexibility preserves happiness. Rigid expectations destroy it.